Hi learners, my name is Dimakazo Mahaladi from Gert Sibande TVET College, Perdekop campus, lecturer in office practice, level 4. Topic today that we are going to cover is topic 3. It is about managing people information in the organization. The specific outcomes that we are going to cover today is organizing the collection of information for human resource, collecting information according to design requirements, identifying sources of income and expenditure for different financial statements. So now we are going to start with the topic. So we go to our first slide, whereby we are going to talk about organizing the collection of information for human resource. So I will start with the explanation of human resource. Human resource are people in the organization, like workers, supervisors, managers, who determine how the organization fares in delivery its service and product. So in that way, human resource, it is the link between the employees and the employer. So now we also have the responsibility of human resource in the organization is to ensure that wages, salaries, benefits, deduction, annual leaves, sick leaves, and personal details are rendered to all the employees in the organization. We are moving on to another slide where we are going to talk about there are 4 collection information according to the design requirements. The first one, we are going to talk about the description and job specification. So I will start with the explanation of the description. It explains the skills, knowledge, and experience needed to do a specific job effectively. And it should entail the following: what workers should do, for example, duties that the workers should do in the organization, how the workers should do it, the machinery, the tools that must be used in order for the worker to be productive. Under what circumstances the task should be carried out, for example, who to report to. It can be your manager or the supervisor in an organization. While we are still here, we also have an attachment that I'm going to open now. It is an example of job description. So can we go to the example of job description? So in front of you now, you are having an example of job description. So when you check there, the first thing that must be there, it must be the title, which is job description. The position, it is administrative intern, and then reporting to, it must be your manager. It is also indicating the duties. When we check our first duty, it is the basic secretarial and administrative functions. We also have handling basic financial administration. We also have typing, faxing, and filing documents, also organizing and attending meetings, maintaining diaries and making appointments, planning, organizing and managing events, making orders of office stationery. So now the date that the job description was drawn, it should also be included. So the date, for example, it is 11 September 2020. And then the name of the person who signed, it must be your supervisor, the supervisor's name and the signature. So now we go back to our slide. Okay, we go to number B, where we are going to talk about a contract of employment. A written contract of employment is drawn when a successful applicant for the position is employed by the organization. It lists the terms and conditions under which agrees to perform a certain duties in return for an agreed upon package and benefits. As we all know, in an organization, there must be an applicant that must be selected if there was an interview. That is why here we are talking about the contract of employment. Okay, this is the continuation of employment of contract of employment. Okay, contract of employment should contain the following acts that govern employment. Number 1, it will be Basic Condition of Employment Act, which covers the working hours, overtime, public holidays, annual leave, and sick leave. We move on to Act number 2, which is Labor Relation Act. It is about the rights of the employees and the employer and regulates the relationship between the two parties. So under labor relations, we also have Labor Relations Act promotes the following: fair labor practice, form and join trade unions, and employers' organization strikes and lockout. So while we are still there, we will also talk about certain benefits that the employer should give the employee. Number one, it will be pension fund, medical aid, and housing benefits and other allowances. We move to another slide where we are going to talk about salary package. A worker receives a remuneration as agreed upon in the employment of contract in a form of wages or salary. The employer is held accountable for deduction made from the staff salary. We also have two main deductions, which are payee and UIF. I'm going to start talking about what is a payee. Is the deduction from the salary of employee who earn more than 60,000 rand per annum, which means the employee who received the amount above should be taxed. UIF is insurance for people who have been retrenched, or the people who earn the salary, they should contribute to the fund. By the law, and the employer are held responsible for paying employees' contribution to the fund on monthly basis. We move to another slide where we are going to talk about wages journal. A wages journal is completed every month, which lists all the expenses on behalf of the employee, and computerized salary program usually summarize this for you. For example, we are going to use Excel to compile a wages journal. So now I'm going to open wages journal in Microsoft Excel. Okay, in front of you now you can see we have an example of wages journal. It is wages journal of Nare Aftercare Center for the week ending 25 February 2020. And then when we check in our wages journal, we have a column for normal time and overtime and deduction and the total deduction and net wages. So first thing that should be in your wages journal, it should have the names of the employees, hours, rate per hour, and the amount, which means for you to get the amount, you should multiply the hours by the rate per hour. And also we move to overtime. Also in overtime we have hours, rate per hour, and the amount. Also in overtime we do the same thing. We multiply hours by rate per hour so that we can get the gross wages. The deductions that we are having, we have UIF, tax payee, staff fund, which means also here the employer is responsible for making sure that this deduction take place before the end of the month. So which means at the end we will have the total deduction and also the net wages, which means when we talk about net wages is take home of the employee. So now we go back to our slide, and then we are going to talk about a salary slip. Salary slip, it serves as an evidence of payment and include gross pay, deduction, and net pay of every employee, which means after compiling the wages journal, in return, the employee should receive a salary slip as an evidence that the employee have received the payment. So we move to another slide. The other slide that we are going to talk about, it is attendance register. The employee fill in the attendance register upon the arrival, and when they leave the workplace, it indicates the date and the time. It is also a handy tool to check absenteeism in the workplace, latecomers, early leavers, and overtime. We also have other time recording system that we use in an organization. Firstly, we will talk about a clock machine, which is automatic time recorder, and number 2, card time recorder, which keep the track of movements of the employees in the organization. We will also talk about computerized system. It checks in and out which means the employer checks in and out on the computer system in an organization. So now we move to another slide where we are going to identify the source of income and expenditure for different financial statements. The first financial statement that we are going to talk about, it will be income statement. An income statement shows the details about profit or loss for a particular period in an organization. It can be prepared for a period of 1 month, 6 months, or a year. So now we also have an example of income statement in Microsoft Excel. In front of us, we have income statement of Gert Sibande, TVET College for the year ended 30 December 2019. So when we check here, we have turnover for the year, which is 500,000 rand, less cost of sales. At the end, we will get a gross profit for the year. For us to get the gross profit for the year, we should minus the turnover, we should minus cost price to our turnover. And then we go to other incomes. Other incomes that we are having, we have rent income, discount received, which means we should add the two so that we can get the amount for other income. And then we move to operating expenses. Operating expenses that we are having, we have advertising, salary, wages, electricity, telephone, and interest on overdraft. We should add all the operating expenses so that we can get the amount for operating expenses. And then we go back. We have added the two income, and then after that we should add gross profit and other income, and then it will give us 433,000 rand. And then we should minus the operating expenses to the gross income for the year so that we can get the net profit for the year. So we move to another slide. Okay, we are still continuing with balance sheet. Okay, balance sheet, it is done after the net profit or a loss has been calculated in the income statement. The financial position of the organization need to be shown. Under the balance sheet, we have assets, which are the property, goods, and money owned by the owner. We also have the owner's equity, which refers to the finances raised by the owner of the organization. We also have liabilities. When we talk about the liabilities, it is the money owed by the organization to outside bodies, which means the organization owed the money to other organizations. Lastly, we have cash flow statement, which deals with the cash flow in the organization and is an indication of availability of cash to the organization. That's all that we are going to cover today, but I just want to go back to our wages journal. So can we please go back to our wages journal? Okay, now I'm going to open wages journal, but I will start by explaining what is wages journal. Okay. Wages journal, it is completed every month in an organization, which means the employee who receives wages, it is the amount or the remuneration that he or she received at the end of every week. So now I'm going to open an example of wages journal in Microsoft Excel. So this is an example of wages journal that we are having. We have wages journal of Nare Aftercare Center for the week ending 25 February 2020. And then under our wages journal, we have normal time. Under normal time, there should be stated the names of the employees, which is very important in wages journal. Our first employee, it will be Nkosi S, number 2 Mugwena N, Radebe B, and Nzima S. So which means there should be the hours that must be indicated in wages journal. The first hour, we will talk about the first employee who works 40 hours, which means who works 40 hours, and then rate per hour is 15 rand. So for us to get that 600, which means we say 15 per hour multiply by 40 hours, and then we receive the amount which is 600 rand. And then we also have overtime hours, rate per hour, amount. So which means for us to get the amount, we have said 20 per hour multiply by 5 hours, which is give us 100 rand. At the end, we should have a gross wages. So the gross wages of Nkosi S is 700 rand. And then we go to the deductions. Under deductions, we have UIF, tax payee, and staff fund, which the employee should contribute in an organization. So I will start by adding all the deductions, and then when we add the deduction for the first employee, which is Nkosi S, the staff fund total, it will be, the total of the deduction, it will be 136. At the end, the employee should get the net wages, which means when we talk about the net wages, it is take home of the employee, and then it will be 564. And then when we move to the second employee, which is Mokoena N, we are going to do the same thing, rate per hour multiply by 35 hours, it will give us the amount which is 350. And then we move to overtime that the employee worked, which means the hour per hour, it will be, rate per hour, it will be 15 rand, multiply by 10 hours, and then it will give us 150. And then we will get to our gross wages, which is 500 rand. And then we move to the deduction of the employee, which is Mokoena N. UIF is, he contributed 4 rand, and then payee is 98 rand, and then staff fund is 3 rand. So all in all, when we get to the deduction, it will be 105. And then take home of the employee, which is net wages, it will be 395. And then we move to Radebe B. Normal time hour is 38, and then rate per hour is 9 rand, which means we will say 9 rand multiply by 38 hours, and then it will give us 342. And then we move to overtime column, whereby we will say rate per hour, which is 20 rand, multiply by 7 hours, and then it will give us 140 rand. And then we move to gross wages. Our gross wages is 482 of Radebe B. And then we move to the deduction. The deduction, the employee contributes 4 rand, 75 rand, and 3 rand. When we add the 3, it is going to give us 82 rand. And then take home of the employee is 400 rand. So which means it falls under net wages. We go to our last employee, which is Nzima S. The hour is 40, rate per hour is 13 rand. And then for us to get the amount, we will say 13 multiply by 40 hours, and then we will get 540. And then we move to column of overtime, where we will say 12 rand rate per hour multiply by 2 hours, and then it will give us 20 rand. And then the gross wages of the employee, which is Nzima S, it will be 540. And then we move to the deduction of the employee, which is 5 rand under UIF, tax payee, which is 110, and then staff funds, which is 3 rand. And then when we add the 3, we are going to get 118, and then take home of the employee, it will be 422, which means that's all for wages journal that we were going to cover. Okay, what we have covered here in topic 3, we have covered how human resource manage the information of the people in an organization. And then we have talked about the journals that we are having in this topic, which means we go back to our specific outcomes, where we were supposed to identify the sources of income. And then we have identified the sources of income, which it was wages journal and salary package. And then also we were talking about the different expenditure, which means whereby we were talking about the financial statements that we are having in an organization. And then we were talking about cash flow, balance sheet, and income statement. According to this lesson, I think what we have learned today, it was about the human resource department, but also including the sources of income. How do we get income in our organization? And then the salary packages of the employees, and also the contract of employees, how the organization drawn up the contract of the employees, and also the job description and the job specification of the employees. I think that's all for today.